Hello, college football fans, and welcome to episode 168 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined from Florida by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Husker fans and college football fans, and maybe a few volleyball fans, as it turns out.
Yeah, well, we're having a lot more success there than we are in football in the Nebraska world, so I don't blame you.
That is true.
Yes, and I am coming to you from Michigan. I am home for the holidays a little earlier this year because of some work situations, so we'll only get a bit of time after Christmas for me to stick around, which is a bit of a bummer because usually you and I like to stick together until New Year's Day, right, and watch the New Year's Six Bowls and things like that. We're
Exactly.
Have to change that up this year.
But it's all for a good cause for you, so it's good stuff.
Yes. So yes, we are a father-son duo here to talk about college football by college football fans for college football fans. And today we'll be talking about a little bit of news with the Nebraska Cornhuskers, with the transfer portal and the early signing day coming up next week, as well as our Nebraska volleyball team that has now made it to the finals in the NCAA tournament. And of course, the major bowl games and the college football playoff semifinal games. We'll be giving our official predictions here for what's to come in the wider world of college football.
Sounds good. And there's so many topics because it's just such a crazy time of year, but we've got time to cover those subjects when we don't have any, so much time sensitive items to discuss.
Precisely. So to fit with that, we're going to go ahead and crack open our beverages. Since I am in Michigan, I had to get some Labatt Blue, which is a Canadian Pilsner beer that I quite like.
Yes, awesome. I'm glad you're drinking something other than that Japanese Sapporo crap.
Crap, you haven't even tried it.
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I went to Japan with you. But it's not crap. It's a good beer. I'm choosing a Yuengling since I'm down here in Florida, and Yuengling is a very popular beer. It's one that both your mom and I enjoy, so I'm going to have a little beverage of that. So
all right,
here we go, and cheers to you.
Cheers. So we're going to kick things off here with some Nebraska football-related news. There's been kind of a whirlwind of stuff going on in terms of the transfer portal. You know, everybody is kind of on QB watch, right? Because we know that that's the area where we need the most help for next year. And so there's been lots of, rumors and, visitations and this and that flying around. We know that, Matt Rule is trying to exert the NIL money he has available to try to get a good transfer to come in. As part of that, it was announced that Jeff Sims will be transferring out of the program, which, is a bummer, from the perspective of that, we weren't able to make it work with him here at Nebraska. But at the same time, he clearly carried a lot of his same issues from last year into this year. So I'm not, overly upset about him leaving as long as we, actually nail one of these transfers that we're trying to get now.
Yes, exactly.
But the big one, of course, is that Dylan Raiola, who is, related to one of our coaches on our assistant staff and who we went after quite aggressively before the season started. He had committed to a different school. I want to say it was Georgia, right?
Well, he was committed to Ohio State and then Georgia, right?
Right.
Yep.
But now we're kind of going after him again, and he's, considering Nebraska again, it seems like. But we're kind of, giving some things up by pursuing that, kind of going for the stars once again. And we failed before, so there's no guarantee that we're going to get it this time.
Exactly. So here's the thing. I kind of feel for the coaching staff because this was a very difficult situation that they found themselves in. One that was incredibly desirable, but one that almost couldn't go the way you would want it to go, right? So they had been, I think, very admirably aggressive at identifying the best quarterbacks in the portal since the final game, since the Iowa game was over. And they had done a very good job of positioning Nebraska to at least get some consideration from some of those top quarterbacks in the portal, specifically this McCord fella from Ohio State, the starting quarterback for Ohio State, as well as one of his teammates who was also a highly regarded. So McCord was a 5-star quarterback when he was coming out of high school. And then the wide receiver was also a very highly regarded player, a 4 or maybe even 5-star in some recruiting services. So you had two incredibly talented players who were both portaling for a final year. And they're basically going out and looking at the marketplace, right? And it looked like we had positioned ourselves very well to enjoy and benefit from them. However, as bad luck would have it, the rumor about Dylan Raiola's instability as a Georgia commit happened to come out at just the wrong time to influence McCord and his teammate Fleming, I believe is his name, wide receiver. And after having what appeared to be a very good visit to Nebraska, they very quickly recognized that because Dylan was in the picture now, they didn't want any part of the possibility. So I'm not going to say that McCord was scared of the competition or anything. That's not the point. But if you're in his situation and you're going for your final year, this is your last year of eligibility, you don't want anything to basically get in your way, right? And up until the Dylan conversation, I think that McCord was very confident that he could come into Nebraska and be the man. But now you all of a sudden get this hyperbolic excitement for an incoming freshman. Then McCord is, one half of bad football away from being replaced temporarily by a Dylan Raiola, who then ends up, lighting the place on fire and doing great. And then now you've lost your chance to demonstrate your capabilities to the NFL. So why would you choose Nebraska, right? I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. I don't think it was an issue of what our NIL operation was doing or any of those kinds of things. I think it was purely a circumstantial set of things that came into play. And once they became public knowledge, it didn't matter that Dylan still hasn't committed to us. It was enough for McCord to say, "See you later. I'm moving down the road." Right. And that's disappointing. You would have hoped that he would have had the confidence to say, "Listen, I get it. No, even if I went any school I go to, they're going to have some freshmen coming in their recruiting class too, but I'm not going to worry about them. I've got 1 year left. I've got the commitment of the coaching staff that says I'm going to be their man, 1 year transitional person, and I'm going to lead the reemergence of Nebraska as a credible football team again. And I'll go down in history. It'll be right. It's going to be a great relationship, right?" But then this Dylan Raiola, who everybody's been talking about because the guy's been in and out of the news for a year and a half, right? So, I understand why McCord did what he did.
Yes, I think, it's totally understandable there. And from our perspective, on the one hand, because he's on his final year, right, McCord can only give you 1 year of, good football. But on the other hand, he's a proven asset, right? He's done well at Ohio State and at his previous positions, whereas Dylan Raiola, while extremely talented, clearly, you don't know how is he going to handle the transition from high school to college, and as you've brought up before, right, we've had multiple years now of starting with a freshman quarterback and continuing with them through their senior year, and it hasn't necessarily worked out for us. So in an ideal world, you would have had McCord to kind of be the stable asset for a year while Dylan Raiola maybe redshirts or, figures things out for himself, gets himself bulked up for college football. But unfortunately, we're in a situation where it seems like these quarterbacks are less and less willing to, have any competition for that starting job, right? We saw that earlier this year where Casey Thompson transferred away from Nebraska, right? Even though he was our starting quarterback in the last year of Scott Frost. But we had Jeff Sims coming in and our other guys, and he was like, I'm coming off of a surgery. I don't know what my situation's going to be. So I'm just not going to, I'm going to go somewhere where I think I can start more immediately. That's the current trend, I would say.
Right. Well, especially among transfers, right? If you're going to transfer and effectively be using your last year of eligibility, you don't want anything that is potentially going to be a roadblock to your playing time, right? Because if you're transferring with the idea that I want to be able to put, performance on tape or a potential professional career, okay, then you don't want anything to get in the way. Or now with NIL, there's that other layer. I want to maximize whatever NIL money I can make in this final year. This is my last year of eligibility to take advantage of this name, image, and likeness stuff. So, they're not gonna be writing that contract to me next year, no matter what, right? It's over. So I need to seize on that moment. Now here's the other element of that too, Alex, is that our current uh, recruit in the 2024 class, who is a quarterback, who's from the state of Nebraska, and who we recruited kind of as a second choice to Dylan from our earlier efforts in recruiting when Dylan didn't choose us and went to Georgia. And then we were able to convince Kaline, Daniel Kaline, to come to Nebraska. He actually was committed to Missouri and switched his commitment to Nebraska. But now at the 11th hour, Dylan Raiola shows back up again, right, and is into the mix. So now Danielle has said, hey, I need to look at my options too. So now he has scheduled a visit this weekend to Michigan State. So we run the risk of losing him to Michigan State because we kind of were in on him, and then last minute we're going to bring in this highly regarded player over the top of him, and I don't think he's very pleased. Plus, Daniel was also very instrumental in being a lead recruiter for us, right? A peer recruiting. He was able to secure the commitments of a number of players to Nebraska because they wanted to play with Daniel. So this has lots of layers, right? A huge ramification that permeates all kinds of things. Somehow, I hope when the dust settles, we don't end up losing 3 or 4 players out of our current recruiting class, plus the opportunity to get McCord, all because we went after Dylan. And then the chance that he would still change his mind again and go back to Georgia is certainly a possibility.
Right. Well, I would hope if I was Daniels, it makes total sense from his point of view to be talking with somebody else. But I hope that he doesn't pull the trigger on that until he hears, for certain that Dylan is, signing up. Because, from his perspective, you probably wouldn't necessarily want to go to a Michigan State where he might have to fight for the QB job a little bit more. Versus staying with Nebraska, who, if we don't get Dylan, he's definitely, kind of like a real contender to be the top guy, right? Because our current crop of quarterbacks is very mediocre, as we've seen.
Right. Well, and if you get Dylan and Daniel stays, then that might increase the probability that Chubba Purdy leaves, because he's graduating in spring and would have the opportunity to leave as a graduate transfer and portal out, even though he portaled here to Nebraska. So I mean, the musical chairs of this are, I'm sure, fascinating and probably making a lot of money for recruiting services and organizations like that. But it's just heart-wrenching for fans who grew up with the stability of college sports. This is not what we had hoped for.
Right. It's definitely a brave new world that we're not ready for. We did get some pieces of good news this week, which included that Alex Ruggerol, a 3-star offensive tackle from Las Vegas, committed to Nebraska. And we also got some news about certain seniors that have decided to remain with the program into next year. Yes. So there's some good news on that front.
And those are huge commitments. I mean, that's a starting right tackle who had his best year by far this past season, and a starting defensive back / linebacker in Gifford, who also was integral to our defense. And then we also got John Bullocks just committed to coming back for his last year. So basically, almost all the key players that had a decision to make about whether they were going to continue their career, if they didn't already have an injury issue that might have had a big impact on their decision, have made the decision to come back. And that speaks to the culture that Coach Rule is creating there. And even after all of this, if we end up with Dillon, but we lose a couple of players, and we didn't hit the home run with McCord, but if we have Dillon Raiola, he's the kind of athlete and player that could be transformative for our football program. Because I guarantee you, if we get him in the fold, then our ability to recruit wide receivers, both out of the portal and in the next couple of years, is going to go up significantly.
Right, because you brought up that Daniels brought some players with him, and I don't know if Dillon's network is as wide, but certainly he would attract some talent, you would think.
Right. Well, no, I think he did all his peer recruiting to Georgia. So, and they're not leaving to follow him to Nebraska. You know what I mean? That's not going to happen. So, it's just based on where the two programs are right now. So I don't think Dillon has the pull to bring anybody with him, but I'm speaking probably more about the 2025 class.
Right.
And the portal class of this year.
Right. Yes. So, and our next podcast obviously will be past the early signing day on the 20th of December. And so we'll see where this all plays out. If Matt Rule's gamble works or if it kind of blows up in our face. We'll see.
Right. But I love that he's swinging for the fence, bottom line.
Right. Because, we know we need a really good quarterback. We need somebody quick. We need somebody through the transfer portal. So I understand why he's doing it.
Yep. I agree.
Now, transitioning to the world of Nebraska volleyball, obviously we talked last podcast about where they were at in terms of the tournament and how they had performed up to that point. So the upcoming game after last podcast was Georgia Tech, which Nebraska managed to defeat in a 3-0 sweep. And then they had to play against Arkansas, who upset their opponent to make it to that Elite Eight game. And we beat them 3-1. Their speed definitely gave us some problems. We dropped that set and kind of had a close set following that, but we managed to beat them. And then just last night against Pittsburgh in the semifinals, Nebraska put on a great performance and won 3-0 with a particularly dominant third set. We had a ton of blocks, both in the Arkansas game and in the Pitt game. So we seem to be doing what John Cook was hoping, and that the girls are not being rattled by the pressure of being in the NCAA tournament and are playing better as they're going along. And so now we have the upcoming match this Sunday against Texas, who beat Wisconsin, our rival. And it's looking exciting. Could this team, mostly composed of freshmen, and no seniors, could they pull off this miraculous run in the year where we also had the stadium full of people watching Nebraska volleyball? I said that would make a great story early on in this season, and it's looking like it might actually happen.
Yeah, well, I think that's that great story. It's already been written, and it's going to be celebrated regardless of whether they win this final match against Texas or not. It is a great surprise to me that Texas was able to beat Wisconsin going into this Final Four. I would have given Wisconsin the highest chance of advancing to the finals of the four teams. I was pleasantly surprised by how well Nebraska played against Pitt. They just gritted it out early in the first set of the match, where both teams were maybe struggling a little bit to find their rhythm, and it was just kind of a survival of the fittest kind of thing in that first set. Neither team hit very well, but our block really showed up. We had 8 blocks in that first set, and so our block was definitely the difference in that first set. And then as the match went on, Pitt improved, and their performance offensively got better, and defensively, both teams were doing some great things defensively. And but then in the third set, we started to separate ourselves because they were struggling to be able to avoid Lexi Rodriguez in the passing. department, so they were trying to serve to other people, but Lexi was just taking taking the ball and putting it right on Bergen's head, and then giving us a good opportunity to have success on offense. And so we ended up hitting over 400 hitting percentage for that third set, and pretty much went away with the win.
Right. Well, it should be mentioned that you were actually in person at this
Yes,
at the game.
I can share a little bit. It was a great day. We got down there, mid afternoon. Your mom and I, and just place was swarming with Husker fans. We went to the Husker Huddle, the bar that it was hosted at. They had no idea how many people were coming. They were underwhelmed or overwhelmed by just the sheer volume of people, and there were people standing outside. They couldn't get in because I guess they were limiting the capacity, and there was Husker chants and red everywhere, and it was a blast. And we literally stood in line for a good 35 minutes to get our first beer. So we ordered 5 beers on the first round. Just because we knew it would take a while to get back, because it was like, okay, I don't want to get in this line again. So we got the bucket of beer. But it's Harpoon's Crab Shack, I think was the name of the place. Had a good time, talked with a number of nice people, some folks who were friends of one of the players, and so we got to know them a little bit. We ended up talking with the official photographer of 1890, the NIL collective. Got a great insight from him, and then we went over to the stadium in time to watch the arrival of both Pitt and Nebraska into the stadium, and it was almost sad. The Pitt bus showed up for the blue carpet, and both sides were already lined up with 90% Nebraska fans, and so they made room for the Pitt band to play as the players came off the bus, and there were a few spattering of Pitt fans to welcome their team. Even Nebraska fans were generally either just didn't say anything or pleasant applause. There wasn't booing or anything. But then after their buses left, then the Husker buses showed up, and there were literally thousands of people lining this area, and it was rock stars arriving. Man, it was so cool. I've got it on video. It was really neat. Ended up being right next to Allie Batenhorse's family, and so we chatted with them. Talked with her sister who plays at SMU for volleyball, and so I got some really good insight from her, and just like a lot of fun. And then we did a little bit of the pregame stuff. There was a whole event going on. I think you may remember when we went to the college football playoff game down in New Orleans. There was the whole events area, fun games area, right?
Right.
They had a similar type of setup for this. It was very, very well done by Tampa Bay hosting this event. Just really cool. And the arena was really nice. So then once we decided to go in, we were able to walk in, find our seats really easily. It was easy in and out. We had our seats were high, of course, because we didn't pay for the crazy money. Here's the great thing for volleyball. On the day of the game and the day before the game, I mean, I would say the day before the game, it was a sellout, and the prices were probably $500 to $600 for a ticket in the lower levels, and the absolute best ticket price you could get was $300 or $400 for the nosebleed seats. And by the next day, it was over $1,000. So it was crazy, right? It was just crazy, the prices for the tickets. So we were glad we had gotten them way earlier, and it was just a good, energetic environment. And once we got into our seats, it was obvious that well over half the crowd, even though there were still 4 teams there, was Nebraska. I mean, it was Nebraska fans everywhere. So very excited to see that.
Yes. Well, and I watched the game on the TV here. And yeah, the camera, I don't know if it was the particular angle that they chose or whatever, but yeah, it was mostly red on the other side, you could see. And that stadium definitely got rocking there in that third set when we started to go on that streak where we were just getting points after points, got multiple aces on them. I want to ask how that was like, because that seemed like that would have been a lot of fun.
It was awesome. Yeah, Merritt Beeson, who frankly, from a hitting percentage standpoint, probably had one of her worst games, and I think it's the first time she was held to less than double-digit kills in half the season, maybe. I mean, she always gets to 10 kills, and she didn't this time. So for on a night when she did not do well in the kills department, she did wonderful as a blocker, and she was amazing. She had four aces from the service line, and 3 in a row, where she yo-yoed a player from Pittsburgh, and just kind of she made it look easy. And yes, the crowd was absolutely going nuts, because at that point it was like, okay, we're winning, right? No way we're going to lose after this, right? So
yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you had fun.
Yeah, and the only downside is that it's a hockey arena, right? So the place was kind of chilly, and so your mom needed to get up and walk around like between sets, and certainly after the first match was over, she needed to go walk around to keep herself warm. She wished she had a jacket, to put on.
Well, you'll be going back for the finals, and now
yes.
you know to bring some jackets.
Absolutely. It's exciting. And the second game, not what I expected. Wisconsin really just kind of broke down a little bit as the match progressed, and their passing and stuff. And they did a great job of locking in, and basically they were camping out on the spots where Sarah Franklin loves to hit the ball, and she still got some kills, but they dug up an awful lot of very powerful attacks from Wisconsin. Texas really did play extremely well in this match.
Right. So to talk about that a bit more, yes, we won 3-0 against Pittsburgh, and then Texas won 3-1 against Wisconsin. The first 2 sets were competitive, went back and forth both ways, so it was 1-1. And then starting in the third set, Wisconsin started to really get their serving game going, and were able to...
You mean Texas?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Texas was really able to get that serving game going, was able to put up a big lead on Wisconsin, and then they basically did the same thing in the fourth set. So they were able to wrap it up in a 3-1. And like you said, yeah, they definitely took advantage of rotations to capitalize on their advantages when they had them, when Wisconsin's best players were out. And really showed off some great athleticism, like you said, some great digs by some of their players. They are, of course, the defending national champions, so they're returning to try to win another title. Looking at their record, I believe they have 4 losses, and 3 of them came early in the season, so they had some early struggles, and then they lost 1 late in their season. But clearly, like Nebraska, they've been improving as they've been going throughout this tournament. So it'll be an exciting finals match.
It is. It's going to be very exciting. And if Texas can perform like they did against Wisconsin, if they can put together another match like they did with that confidence boost, they're going to be a very difficult out for Nebraska, because they have way more offensive firepower than we do. But I think we are a more balanced team, and our defense, of course, is excellent. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm confident that our passing and serve receive game will be better than what Wisconsin was able to demonstrate. And I really feel like Texas played well, but I also feel like Wisconsin played poorly. And I think, in an honest moment, they'll absolutely agree with that. That was not the Wisconsin team that was playing in the field house when they played us, and they were digging everything, digging dimes, and just kicking butt in every aspect of the game. They had no weakness when they played us in Madison, right? So that's our only loss. And so if you have a team that catches fire like that, sometimes it's just really tough to beat them. But defense travels, and that's why I feel like we still have a pretty good chance.
So yes, we personally, even though obviously you hate Texas, we were rooting for Texas because Wisconsin has been the bane of Nebraska's existence in the volleyball world. And both teams, even though their game went to 4 sets, Like we mentioned, Texas was kind of able to dominate the final two. So pretty evened out in terms of tiredness of both teams. I think they'll both recover and be ready for Sunday. So the question is, to give a prediction, what do you think the set count is going to be, and who do you think is going to win? I'm going to go ahead and say that Nebraska wins 3-1.
There you go. Here's the thing. They actually have more time in this setup, this schedule, than they've ever had before, because they moved the finals to Sunday. So there's an extra day in there. So, usually they would have played on a Thursday, and then the finals would have been on a Saturday. So there would only be one day in between. Now they have 2 days. So both teams have more time to prepare for this finals match, right? They're gonna have multiple practices between now and then. A lot more time for the coaches to dive in and strategize and put together, a game plan to defend the other team. So I think that's going to be interesting to watch, and is going to be quite fascinating. And the storylines for this matchup, because most people thought it was going to be Wisconsin, I don't think very many people thought this would ultimately be the matchup. But obviously the long-standing rivalry between Texas and Nebraska is always there. But then you have players that have transferred from one school to the other. You have coaches that used to be married to each other that are on opposite sides of this thing now, and very contentious in so many levels at so many ways. So this is going to be fascinating. The fan bases don't like each other, and we're really young, and they have a bunch of mature fifth-year people that are just outstanding. So it's going to be a fascinating, thing to observe. But I'm going to pick the Cornhuskers to win this. I think we're capable of doing that. With our youth, it's always a flip of the coin, so I'm always nervous about it. Which one of our teams is going to show up, and are we going to be able to pass well enough to keep them from putting all this service pressure on us? They're a better serving team than we are. We are an average serving team. They are an exceptional serving team. So we're going to have to manage that as best we possibly can. And then I just hope our team defense and our offense is enough to get over the finish line. I have a feeling it's going to go 5. I think it's going to go 5, and it's literally going to be a coin flip as to who ends up winning it. But I think that fifth set won't necessarily be close. Somebody's going to take an early lead and then just run away with it.
Okay.
So I'm going to say it's going to go in 5, but Nebraska's going to win it, and it's going to be 15-11.
Okay, I like it. 2 final points. One is that John Cook was voted as the coach of the year in the volleyball world. Apparently it's his 3rd time winning that particular award, and it's particularly impressive that he was able to go this far with so many young players on his team this year. And similarly, I remember on the last podcast I mentioned that, even if we made the semifinals, right, with this young team, we'd have to consider that a victory. And, of course, we made it past the semifinals into the finals, so this is already beyond those expectations. So, if we end up losing to this Texas team that won the national championship last year, I think Nebraska fans can't be too upset. This is already an exceptional year for this young team. But, of course, we want them to win, and if they were able to pull it out, there'll be celebrations in Lincoln like haven't been seen in some time.
That's right. Well, and there'll be a hell of a party in Tampa, too, on Sunday afternoon.
And you'll be there right in the middle of it.
And I'll be there. You betcha. We should. It'll be interesting to see how many Texas fans fly down now, because we didn't sense that there was a huge Texas presence last night. But I have a feeling now that they made it to the finals, you're going to see the number of Texas fans quadruple between now and Sunday afternoon.
Right, because to your point, it was expected that they would lose to Wisconsin.
I think so. And I think even their fan base was they were feeling like they were already on, borrowed money there, and and their college football team is in the playoffs, right? So if you're going to make a major trip as a sports fan for Texas, and you can't do both, which one are you choosing? Are you choosing the semifinal game with Texas football, or are you choosing the semifinal game for the volleyball team?
Yes. Well, and since Nebraska football did not make it to a bowl game this year, I'm thankful that the volleyball team made it far in the playoffs, so we still have some wintertime Husker sports to look forward to.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
So now switching to the national side of college football, Jaden Daniels from LSU, their quarterback, won the Heisman. Wasn't particularly surprising. He was the favorite in pretty much everyone's estimations, and he won it. So congratulations to him. He had some insane stats, both passing and running the ball this year. Do you have any comments on the Heisman race for this year?
You know, I have become less and less of an aficionado of the Heisman Trophy. Frankly, ever since the debacle that was the Indomitian Sue snuff, and combined with the Tommy Frazier snuff of 1995, as a Husker fan, the credibility of that award has diminished so much in my mind. I really don't care that much, and it's become a bogus quarterback hype award, and it's not even the best player in college football anymore. For those reasons, no, I don't care that much. And I mean that the gentleman who won it had a great year. Obviously, had put up some crazy stats and showed himself to be very multidimensional, which is very popular today, both in the NFL as well as college. So I get why there is all this, focus and excitement around him. It is what it is. I'm actually glad it wasn't some of the other people that were on the list, just because those schools have had so many, Heisman Trophy winners in the past. Although Washington not so much, but Ohio State has had Heisman winners and things like that. So I don't know. That's kind of my feeling. That's ho hum. It doesn't even reflect the best player in college football anymore.
Right. Well, to your point that you raised on the last podcast, because of the Indomitian Sue debacle and outrage from the general public about that, the defensive players have won it in the past decade, since he was nominated. So I think it has involved some changes there. And I think it's more interesting when there's a real competition for the award and there's some drama. In this case,
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels seemed to be far and out the winners beforehand, so there wasn't a lot to excite people about.
Yeah, this Heisman watch has become a thing where basically you cannot have a bad game, right? Like, you can have a great year, right? And even go undefeated. But if you have a game where you statistically are off, but even if your teammates, rally around that and still win the game, your bad stats will shove you down the list, right?
Right.
Whereas, and you need to have a Heisman moment, so to speak. You either have to have a game that's just a eye-popping stat game, or you need to have a few key plays that get played over and over and over and over again to build your awareness. It's like a political candidate, where your positive Q rating or whatever. So, that's the part that is wears on me. Is it a stat award or is it the most valuable player? Because again, Tommy Frazier was never going to have the stats, but there was no one in college football who was doing more for his team than Tommy was for us. So.
Right. All right. And then last thing for today is that we're going to give some predictions for the bowl games and go over the big matchups along with, of course, the semifinals for the college football playoff. So one of the interesting matchups in kind of the lesser bowls, the more mid-tier bowls, is Louisiana versus USC in the Holiday Bowl. Louisiana obviously coming off of their disappointing performance against FSU, but they were stopped by FSU's elite defense, and USC definitely does not have that same elite defense. And B,
wait a minute, Louisiana. Who are you talking about?
Louisville. That's what I meant.
Louisville. Yes. Thank you. Okay.
There we go.
All right. Now I got it.
Yes, Louisville. So they've got to go up against USC's defense, which isn't as good. And we already know that Caleb Williams, which is a trend we'll be talking about a lot during these discussions, will be sitting out of the bowl game. He will not be playing, so they will be missing their best weapon on offense. So this kind of gets into this weird situation with a lot of these games where, it seems like one team should be the clear favorite, But if they have a lot of their key players sitting out, then it becomes more of a coin toss, right? And I think this is one of those
Right.
situations.
Okay. So that's the thing, is that we're doing this almost way too early because, there's going to be some other players that likely announce after we get finished recording this podcast that'll have a huge impact. And honestly, I don't have those lists in front of me. So that puts me at an additional disadvantage in terms of assessing who's really going to be the most talented team and then who wants to be there, right? Like when you lose your leader, your quarterback, I mean, how demotivating is that for almost every other player on that team?
Right. Yeah. Well, and you would say, even though Louisville is probably disappointed that they lost the ACC championship game, they're still having a better season than they've had in a while. So I think they definitely are happier to be there than USC.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The question is, was Louisville's record built on the backs of a fairly easy schedule or not? You know what I mean? Like they put up some gaudy numbers and just did a phenomenal job, but was that because maybe they caught lucky breaks through the schedule gods, and when the good teams played them, maybe they had some players injured, who didn't play. Those kinds of things can often help a team have a spectacular record, even though they might only be a modestly good team.
Right, right. Another one of those games that's in a similar sort of situation is Clemson versus Kentucky. That's the Gator Bowl this year. So both of them, a little bit of a disappointment, right? Kentucky, I think, had a better record earlier on in this season, but then kind of lost some games later. And then Clemson obviously is kind of still in this slump period that they've been in for a couple of years under Dabo Sweeney. So what are your thoughts on that game?
If I had to pick, I would probably be leaning towards Kentucky. A couple of reasons for that is that their coach just got a vote of confidence by having a new contract, and they did have a couple of losses late, but they also had some good wins late, and so I I believe that they will be there, motivated, ready to play, and really wanting to be successful. Where, like you said, I think Clemson is still in that maybe feeling sorry for themselves mode and frustrated because they have witnessed this slight decline in their effectiveness and their success. And so I don't know how motivated Clemson's going to be for this game. So I would pick Kentucky just based on where I think the two teams, culture and psyche are at.
Yeah, you may very well be right on that. I'm thinking I might lean towards Clemson. I think that they may be able to get it done for them. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with them. On the other hand, I think I'm going to lean towards Louisville in that one we were talking about earlier with USC. I think they're happier to be
Yeah.
there for sure.
Well, I really don't know anything about the backup quarterback at USC. And
Yeah,
I'm sure he's talented. I mean, that they have an incredible roster. But the fact is that USC was out shopping for portal quarterbacks, right? They were going after some of the same guys we are in the portal. So I that tells me they must not think the world of this guy. So I'm going to go with Louisville also.
and then this is an interesting one. The Sun Bowl is Oregon State versus Notre Dame. Obviously, Oregon State, right? Once again, they're definitely one of those ones that are happy to be there because they had a good season this year by their usual standards. Not quite so much for Notre Dame, but I'm not sure that they had like serious national championship aspirations this year either, right? In terms of their level. So I would normally lean towards Notre Dame just because they certainly have more talent probably than Oregon State does on the field. But then we've got the fact that Oregon State's probably happier to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Oregon State wins that one.
And where is this game being played? What's the bowl?
The Sun Bowl.
Sun Bowl, which is in El Paso, Texas. I'm going to pick Notre Dame. I'll go the opposite, and here's why. Keep in mind that Oregon State's coach left and took the Michigan State job.
Ah, yes.
And their quarterback went into the portal. Now I don't know if that quarterback was the backup quarterback at Oregon State or the starter. I'm not remembering, but I got a sense that there was a little bit of a departure from Oregon State right after their head coach, made the decision to move to Michigan State. So Oregon State, although they will certainly, their fan base and everybody's going to be excited to be there. It's one of the, rare bowl opportunities for them. So they'll travel well. They're not Notre Dame. And Notre Dame in the state of Texas is huge. So even though Notre Dame had a disappointing year, I think they'll still have a pretty darn good following and support there for Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is talented. So I'm going to pick Notre Dame.
Okay. I will just add that did learn from some quick Googling that Sam Hartman, Notre Dame's starting quarterback, is sitting out as well. So both teams, I guess, will be without their...
Is that right? I didn't even know that. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've been talking about this trend for some time on the podcast, and unfortunately, it's just kind of continued to grow as, college football is becoming more semi-pro, than amateur,
Yes.
and everyone's saving their bodies for... NFL draft and things of that nature. They don't view the bowl games as important enough.
Here's what I think needs to happen, Alex. This is something for our podcast listeners to consider. Is I wonder if there's going to come a point where these players who are saving themselves for the NFL with all the NIL money that's now available and the comfort that exists in the cocoon that is college sports at this point, with all the great facilities and all the resources that are made available to you, oftentimes that are better than even the NFL provides, that some of these kids aren't going to start figuring this out. And I don't know if it's going to take somebody doing a research paper where they research the portal and they research the real dollars and cents that get provided in NIL, and they begin to paint a picture about, this is the reality. Okay. All the, conversation and speculation, forget all that. Let's get down to the brass tacks, dollars and cents, and the observations of things. And it would be a fascinating research project. And, if I had some guts, I'd do it myself.
Well, I recall us talking last year, I think it was with Brian Clower on, about, the Bowls kind of handing out some NIL money, right, to the players to kind of incentivize them to play in the bowl games.
Yes.
That maybe become a more common thing, along with, a secondary fact that we know that this bowl season, the NCAA is testing out the using tablets to communicate plays back and forth, as well as headsets for quarterbacks with the coaches and things like that. Things have become much more relevant because of the whole science stealing scandal with Michigan this year. So we'll see how that all kind of plays out.
Yep, that's interesting. And I hope that those experiments go successfully. But I wish I knew how I could figure out if there were somebody already doing this research, or if no one is, if there's somebody who would be willing to provide the funding to complete the research and do that, because I think it would be incredibly insightful for all kinds of organizations, not just the sports or the players, but all of them, right? The universities, the players, the marketing institutions, the media companies. They would all want to know the results of that.
Right. Well, there you go. Dad's putting together a research fund here, podcast listeners. You can donate.
Correct.
And then the Alamo Bowl is quite interesting this year. It's Arizona versus Oklahoma. Arizona, obviously, currently in the Pac-12, but will be in the Big 12 next year. And then Oklahoma, of course, being the SEC next year. So you'd think Arizona is probably, certainly happier to be there, right? They had a pretty good season by their standards. And I've learned that Oklahoma, not only is their quarterback gone, But apparently, their entire starting offensive line will not be in this game, which is leaning me to think that Arizona should be able to take this one, even though I think Oklahoma is the more talented team.
Well, and Oklahoma lost their offensive coordinator, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, multiple losses then. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He got that. I mean, he didn't get fired. He actually took a head coaching job. I think the Mississippi State job. So, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But that means that they're going to be without the guy who was calling the shots, and now somebody else is going to do that. Wow, the whole offensive line. That's crazy.
yeah.
Well,
I saw that headline yesterday, and you are correct. Their former offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby is now at Mississippi State.
yeah, that's huge. Wow. I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to say that Oklahoma's got enough talent that their offensive line, who's the replacement players that are going to be in there, are going to do very well and um, go from there. So
All right. Well,
that's crazy.
I'm going to have us give a score prediction for this one since I think it is an interesting matchup. So I'm going to say that Arizona wins, though it'll be pretty narrow. But let's say it'll be 32 Arizona to 28 Oklahoma.
Okay, I'm going to say that it's going to be Oklahoma is going to be very unpredictable. See, they're going to have a new offensive coordinator. They're going to have a new offensive line. There's just going to be a lot of freshness to what they do. And I think their defense is going to play very well. So I'm going to say that it's going to be Oklahoma 28 and then Arizona 17.
Okay. And then another interesting matchup outside of the New Year's Six is LSU going up against Wisconsin in the ReliQuest Bowl. Now, I'm not 100% sure where LSU is at in terms of their players sitting out, like that Jaden Daniels kid, right, who just won the Heisman. But my impression is that they should be able to beat Wisconsin pretty solidly. This is not a great Wisconsin team this year. They've had their struggles with their new first-time head coach. So I'm thinking I'm leaning LSU on that one.
I would absolutely agree. And Wisconsin, like they beat us because they still had, a bull at running back that they could just hand the ball off to and be confident in his ball security and his ability to just grind out first downs at the end of the game to win. And that guy has made himself available to the draft and is out. Without him, I think that's a big dent in the ability for Wisconsin to be balanced. So I agree with you. I think LSU wins, and I think it's going to be kind of a blowout. I would say it's going to be like 42 to 21.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. As I've been doing throughout this podcast, I just did a quick Google search. It says they have 8 players on LSU's side sitting out of the bowl game. So some various running backs and defensive players, cornerback, but looks like not the quarterback. Jaden Daniels is in, so that's definitely a big feather in their cap.
Yeah.
And then the Citrus Bowl has Tennessee versus Iowa, another SEC versus Big Ten matchup, which, as we are wont to do, obviously we'll take a look at what the different conferences do, how they perform in the various bowls. But I think this is another one that should go the SEC's way. Iowa obviously has an elite defense, but their offense is just so putrid that I feel like Tennessee should be able to win that one.
I would agree with you. I think Tennessee wins this one as well.
Yeah, we're both in agreement there. So now we're getting into some of the big boy bowls, the New Year's Six bowls. This one's quite interesting. Missouri versus Ohio State, another SEC Big Ten matchup in the Cotton Bowl. Missouri is ranked 9th, while Ohio State's ranked 7th. And I would say that, we brought up the point that in terms of sheer talent and stats and stuff, Ohio State maybe even deserved to be in the top 4 this year, just going off of talent alone, even though they didn't beat Michigan on the field. So I'm inclined to think that they will win that one, unless they have, going once again by the whole who wants to be there more. Missouri certainly is happier to be there because they're having one of their best seasons in a long time, and Ohio State's kind of disappointed that they got left out. So that might be the deciding factor, but I think I'm still going to lean towards Ohio State.
So here's the question: is Marvin Harrison playing? and since McCord is in the portal, I'm assuming he's not playing for him. So, they've got Ohio State's going to have a new quarterback, and I wonder about their top wide receivers and whether or not they're going to play. But the thing is, Ohio State had a pretty darn good defense. They were one of the top defenses in the country. So, assuming that most of the defensive players are still playing in this bowl game, then I'm going to go with Ohio State as well. But I would say that with a caveat, so I got it recorded, that if I find out between now and the actual game being played that Ohio State has a bunch of defensive players that are not playing, as well as the aforementioned offensive talent, then it's possible Missouri could win that one.
Right. Well, so I'm looking right now. They have 14 players. It does not include Marvin Harrison, but they have like a wide receiver, 2 running backs, a tight end, and an O-lineman, their center, 2 safeties, 2 cornerbacks, a linebacker, a defensive lineman, and their kicker.
Wow. That's crazy.
Now, I don't know how many of those are starters, right? Probably some of them are in the, not their starters, but still, it's a pretty extensive list.
Well, hopefully they're not all starters, because if they are, then Ohio State might be in trouble on this one. But especially if Missouri doesn't have much in the way of guys that aren't playing.
That's right. So I'm going to predict that Ohio State wins in a little bit of a lower scoring game. Let's say 24-17 over Mizzou.
Yeah, that's a good score. I also think it's going to be low scoring because I think Ohio State's defense is pretty darn good. So I like that 17 score that you gave. I'm going to go ahead and so it's different than yours. I'll do 28-17
with Ohio State winning.
Ohio State winning.
Okay, I like it. And then in the Peach Bowl, we have Ole Miss versus Penn State. Also ranked very close together. Penn State had a pretty good season overall. So I'm inclined to lean towards them as well, going with my Big Ten beliefs. But once again, a lot of it comes down to what players are sitting out, right?
Yes. Well, I would say that that's also very true. But Ole Miss's coach, is kind of aloof or unique, right? He's a savant, and so I think I wonder he's either going to mail it in and it's not going to go well for them, or he's going to have a zeroed in game plan and just kick ass. I'm going to go with Penn State also, as I think about this. But this is one that I could see Penn State getting their asses beat too. I mean, that's the thing. But I'll go with Penn State because they do have a good defense at Penn State and they have a solid offense. They just don't have a great quarterback. Penn State has an average quarterback.
Right. Well, and I will say that Penn State did fire their defensive coordinator earlier this year, and they've had one of their assistants step up to fill in for him, but they still haven't filled that position with a proper replacement. So that could be a factor.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm switching. I'll go Ole Miss.
All right.
I'm gonna go Ole Miss, and you go Penn State.
All right. Well, I'll say Penn State wins. Let's say 28-17.
Okay, if Ole Miss wins, I think it's going to be like 48-41.
Okay, highest scoring affair. I like it. And then this one's quite interesting. We have Oregon versus Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl. Liberty is the undefeated team from the group of 5, kind of going up against one of the big boys in Oregon. Now, I know that Oregon has lost some of its players to the transfer portal or sitting out, although I believe that their quarterback is still playing Bo Nix. But Liberty, of course, they're going to have no players sitting out. They're very happy to be there. This is their chance to kind of make a mark. So do you think with a potentially more limited Oregon team that Liberty has a chance?
I'm going to still go with Oregon.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I'm going to go ahead and agree and say that Oregon wins, but I think it'll be a close game. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's relatively high scoring and that Oregon wins 38 to 28 over Liberty.
Okay. Well, I'll say 38 for Oregon, just like you. But I will say Liberty only scores 17.
17 for Liberty. And what did you say Oregon would score?
38, same as you. Yeah, I'll just go the same as you on that. That sounds like although, let's do 42. Let's put 42 for me on that, just because 38 seems like kind of an odd score.
Okay, here we go. I've just in my time of Googling here, there's a website that's put together a big opt-out list for all the bowl games. So that's helpful to help keep track of where the various teams are at.
There you go.
Oh, wow. Liberty actually does have quite a few players going out in the transfer portal. And then Oregon, has some as well, including Ty Thompson, but he's obviously not their starting quarterback. Some of their wide receivers are sitting out. So, with that in mind, I think Oregon should win that one. And then this one's quite interesting for the national implications of it. Georgia versus Florida State. I know for a fact that quite a few of the Florida State players are sitting out of that one because, A, standard transfer portal, and NFL draft considerations that we've talked about for everyone else, and B, obviously their extreme disappointment that they were left out of the playoff game, and players who were playing injured, but fighting on because they wanted to get into the playoff, right? Now all those players are going to be sitting out and potentially even in protest, right, because of what the college football playoff did. Now Georgia's kind of in a similar situation where some of them feel like they were gypped and that they deserve to be in the playoff as well, but I think the sensation is more acute for Florida State, not to mention that they will be playing with their second team quarterback because their first team guy has been hurt. So while it goes against the narrative that I prefer, that Florida State deserved to be in the top four of the playoff, unfortunately, I think that Georgia will be able to handle them and win pretty solidly.
I would totally agree, especially, and if that's true, what you say, that some of these kids for Florida State have stepped away, not in protest, but I mean, because they were disappointed in the decision. That is not the kind of culture I would want as a coach or as a fan. I want a team that would be angry and want to be able to demonstrate that they deserve to be there and use that energy to propel them to victory. And if a bunch of them stepped away, that's not the response I would have expected or hoped for. And that's a bad sign for Florida State. And I already would have thought, even if they were both at full strength, that Georgia was a clear favorite to win this game just because of the circumstances. But now I would say it's even more so. Now, Georgia doesn't have a great quarterback, so I don't think it'll be like a huge, point total, but I think it'll be a solid victory for Georgia. So I'm going to say, but if they have the chance to run it up, they probably would. So I'm going to say it's going to be 35 to 14.
35 to 14. Okay, I like that score. You may puke when you hear this. So I was just looking on that website. I counted up 19 players sitting out for Florida State and 17 sitting out for Georgia. So both teams are really shadows of their regular season selves, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm surprised of that for Georgia. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they've got a lot of NFL caliber talent on that team. Well,
that's true, but wow. Okay. Well, that might be a more competitive game. That'll be like next year's teams playing each other, right? Like this is all going to be the kids that are going to be playing next year for both of those squads.
Yeah. I'm going to agree that Georgia wins. I'm going to say it'll be kind of a sloppy game on both sides based off of that assessment. Um, so let's say that it is 32 for Georgia to 17 FSU. All right, and so now that leaves us with the final two, which are, of course, the two big semifinal games. Let's start off with Alabama versus Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Obviously, Alabama's the one that kind of snuck in here, and you mentioned on the previous podcast how Alabama's kind of a bad matchup for Michigan. I saw someone making the point that when Nick Saban has lost in these recent years, it's usually been to a good passing team. He rarely gets beat by a team that's running the ball, and that's obviously Michigan's real strength. But on the other hand, I want Michigan to win, even though they're the sign stealers and everything this year. My hatred for Alabama is greater, and the fact that they snuck in there at the last minute in this corrupt kind of bargain. So I want Michigan to win so bad that I gotta choose them as my favorite.
I love it. Well, the other thing that's key to note is, Michigan lost their best lineman, right? Who was their emotional and spiritual, leader, and I think a captain. And I don't think he's going to make it back, right? Like, even though there's a month, I think he needed to have season-ending surgery. So he's done. And he was going to be going to the NFL anyway. So I don't think he'd risk it. So that's big in my mind. And I agree with you on the history of Nick Saban and Alabama and their familiarity with preparing for this. But again, I keep focusing on, the team that from Alabama that should have lost to Auburn. That's the thing I can't get over, right? That's a loss. That's a loss that Alabama should have sustained. But other than that game, all the other, say, last 5 of Alabama's season, Alabama looked to be getting better and better and better, and their quarterback looked to be getting better and better and better. Now they have a whole month to prepare and get better and better and better. Then on the other side of the coin, this is at the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
You take Alabama out of the South, and their record isn't so good. They do really well in bowl games, like the Sugar Bowl and the Orange Bowl, and maybe even the Bulls in Texas, when they had the game at the Jerry Dome. But you get them, out west like that, and that's a less comfortable environment for them.
Right.
So that makes it an intriguing matchup.
Right, and Michigan certainly is used to traveling out west for the Rose Bowl.
I want Michigan to win. I do. That's where, even though I'm frustrated with the whole sign stealing thing and the way that university's arrogance was displayed through that whole process and their fans' reaction to it. But I'm going to go with Alabama just to be contrarian to you, and because as much as I hate Nick Saban, he's a brilliant coach, and when you give him a month to prepare and a chance to win a championship, I think he and his staff will be driven to the utmost, and they will perform very well in this game. The best Alabama, will be what was on display. So I think it's going to be enough, and Alabama wins.
Okay.
As much as that pisses me off.
Well, so I'm going to go ahead and say that Michigan keeps it relatively lower scoring because I think their defense will have to step up to keep Alabama in check. So I'm going to say it ends up being 31 Michigan to 24 Alabama.
And I will take the opposite, but with Alabama winning.
Okay.
Same score, but Alabama being the victor.
I'm curious from your conversations with your buddy Brian, who is, of course, a big Michigan fan, is he feeling good about Michigan's odds, or is he worried?
Oh, he's always worried. He always builds him. Absolutely. Alabama is the greatest team of all time at this point, in his mind. But he obviously very much wants and believes that Michigan will win this football game. But he also acknowledges that Alabama is probably the toughest matchup that they could have gotten. Right? Like he would have felt better with matching up with either of the other teams.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see. what happens. But he would certainly pick Michigan to win that Alabama game. He thinks it'll be tough, but that Michigan will win.
Right. Well, and I'm thinking back to our conversation with Brian from last year, where of course they lost to TCU, and he talked about Jim Harbaugh carrying on the Bo Schembechler tradition of losing in the postseason. And you'll recall that in that game, they kind of went away from their bread and butter of running it and tried to throw it a lot, and kind of made some kind of unconventional coaching decisions. My hope would be that they've learned from that mistake last year and that they will stick closer to what's been succeeding for them in the regular season when they go up against Alabama.
Right. I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree.
And then we have Texas versus Washington in the Sugar Bowl. And I think this one is quite competitive and quite interesting. Texas looked very good in their win in the Big 12 championship. They looked the most dominant of any of the champions in terms of the general matchup. But on the other hand, Washington overcame a very difficult Pac-12 schedule this year, including beating Oregon twice, and managed to remain undefeated, while Texas does have their one loss to Oklahoma. And also, the nadir, of course, for us as Nebraska fans would be an Alabama versus Texas national championship where we don't want either team to win. So I'm going to go with my heart here and say that Washington, who has, kind of been a scrappy team and managed to win in tough situations, even if it's close throughout this whole season, I think they're going to find a way to do that again. And their great quarterback will have another terrific game, and they will manage to beat Texas.
What bowl game?
Sugar Bowl.
It's going to be in the Sugar Bowl. Wow. So here's where the fan following has an impact. That stadium is going to be three-quarters. Might as well be a home game for Texas.
Right.
So you're picking Washington. I'm going to pick Texas. I hate Texas. You know this.
Yes.
But I mean, it's huge that they get to do this at the Sugar Bowl. Where they have played a number of times. It's a day's drive from Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. So I think you're going to get a massive number of Longhorn fans there. And so if things start to go well for Texas, then they will ride that train all the way to victory. You know what I mean? Where I think Washington, although they have a good following, they are a Pac-12 school still, and their following doesn't tend to be as rabid as Texas's would be. So as far as the teams on the field, I kind of agree with you. I think Washington's the better team. Okay, I'm gonna go with you on this one, and I'm gonna pick Washington to win as well, even in the teeth of a huge, home court advantage, so to speak, for Texas.
All right. Well, I'm gonna say Washington wins 42-35.
Okay, I'm gonna say Washington's gonna win, and it's gonna be 52-48.
Even more high scoring. Very cool. All right. So based off that, I'm predicting a Washington versus Michigan national championship game, and you're predicting Washington versus Alabama. So we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, we've made our position very clear in the previous podcast that Florida State should have been in this playoff discussion. So we're hoping it plays out a certain way. I think if it was Michigan-Washington, I'd be rooting for Washington because, Michigan has the whole sign stealing thing over their heads this year and everything like that. But I could be satisfied with either team winning, whereas Alabama versus Texas would be much more challenging for me to stomach either way.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I get it.
So we'll see how things play out. Like I said, we'll be doing another podcast after all these bowl games are done in the semifinals, so we'll be able to talk about the results, what the national championship game is going to be, plus what resulted from Nebraska's recruiting and our quarterback transfer battle and that kind of stuff, plus Nebraska volleyball and their situation. So there's a lot that we'll be able to talk about next time.
There you go.
Well, if you enjoyed this podcast, you can reach out to us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you search for College Football Throwdown. You can leave us a rating or review there. We always love hearing from the fans. So thank you all out there for listening, and thank you, Dad, for joining me for this episode. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.